This film will provide a Soviet perspective on the events that took place in the Norwegian Sea in 1968, when a Soviet Tu-16 aircraft crashed during a low-altitude flyby of the USS Essex aircraft carrier. Some time ago, this channel showed footage taken by an aircraft carrier cameraman, but it was not accompanied by detailed comments. This film contains commentary from experts and some witnesses to those events. In May 1968, the U.S. Navy Essex carrier group conducted maneuvers in the Norwegian Sea. When the Soviet Navy became aware of this, they sent the destroyer Sosnatelny to that area in order to observe the actions of the American aircraft carrier group.
Вышли из Североморска 3 мая 1968 года.
We left Severomorsk on May 3, 1968. We had the task of serving in the North Atlantic region. At the same time, monitor the actions of the Essex strike group.
На слежение с авианосной ударной группой Essex, выявлять их деятельность в море.
Представьте себе чужой авианосец.
The Norwegian Sea is the road to the main base of the Soviet Northern Fleet. So when such groups of American ships appeared in the area, Soviet aviation increased its activity.
Боевые корабли.
Excerpt from the report of the commander of the aircraft carrier Essex to the Chief of Naval Staff. On May 22, 13 Soviet aircraft flew over the aircraft carrier.
Периодичность слежения задается командованием.
Our command established the frequency of monitoring. Contact with the aircraft carrier group had to occur every 4 hours and no less often.
Через 4 часа, чтобы был контакт. Контакт не реже.
But despite such activity, one day the Soviets lost the location of the aircraft carrier. Another Tu-16 under the command of pilot Shakirov returned from a reconnaissance flight with nothing. They didn't find the aircraft carrier.
И командующий флотом говорит: товарищ командующий авиацией.
The fleet commander asked the air commander, "Where is the information I need? Where is Essex?" And he had nothing to answer.
Что она Москва?
By decision of the command, the squadron commander Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Pliv had to correct Shakirov's mistake. For this reason, he was recalled from vacation. Alexander Pliv was the leading pilot. He practiced flying at ultra-low altitudes. In his opinion, such a technique during reconnaissance helps avoid detection of the aircraft by enemy radar. Often after his flights, white stains from sea salt remained on the cockpit glazing. Shakirov's failure had a negative impact on all pilots.
Ну, как побитый, понимаете? Ну, потерял, не нашел корабли, не подтвердил.
And then Pliv told them, "Don't be sad. Now I'll find that aircraft carrier." And they flew away.
Я не улетел.
In the early morning of May 25, 1968, a pair of Tu-16, our naval reconnaissance aircraft under the command of Alexander Pliv, took off from the Severomorsk 1 airfield and headed for the Norwegian Sea. Their mission was to rediscover the aircraft carrier Essex and guide the destroyer Sosnatelny towards her. The flight was carried out at medium altitudes to avoid detection of the group by air defense radars of escort ships at long distances. At 11.02, the aircraft carrier was found. At 11.05, the pilots informed the Essex's location to the Center of Operations of the Northern Fleet. After this, Pliv decided to make the fact of the discovery of the aircraft carrier demonstrative. He ordered the crew of the second plane to rise to a higher altitude. thereby revealing themselves and diverting the attention of the air defense of the American squadron. And he himself, having reduced the flight of his plane to a height of 15 or 20 meters, defiantly flew near the Essex.
Он донес, что он обнаружил Эссекс.
He reported that he had found an aircraft carrier. He also counted how many ships were escorted. Having received the exact coordinates of the location of the American naval group, I went to approach it. About 2 hours later, one of the ships of the group met us. We saw a flag signal on its mast. The ship has splashed down, so we translated it.
Сигнал «Корабль приводнился». Мы так перевели.
What this actually meant was that one of the planes had crashed into the sea. The commander of the carrier Essex reported that, at 11:05 a Russian planeside number 94 of the Badger class appeared and made several passes over Essex. During one of the circles at 11:52, making a left turn, it caught the water with its wing, crashed into the water, broke into pieces, and exploded 14,000 yards from the aircraft carrier. Everything that happened around was filmed by the aircraft carrier's cameraman. Subsequently, a copy of it was handed over to Soviet leaders. But in the Soviet Union, this video will be classified immediately. For the first public display of this crash, materials from the United States National Archives were used. The freeze frame was made on purpose to better sense what was happening. A 30-meter plane rushes at a speed of 500 kilometers per hour at the height of the deck of the aircraft carrier. This is approximately 15 meters. When turning to a new circle, the Tu-16 touches the surface of the sea with its wing and is destroyed when it hits the water. When the plane moved away from the aircraft carrier, the cameraman turned off his camera, and therefore the main moment of the accident could not be filmed. Then, probably in shock, he could not adjust the aperture on the camera lens for a long time, and the shots turned out to be of poor quality. Seeing what happened, the Americans rushed to the rescue at full speed. Helicopters and rescue boats were sent to the scene of the incident, but no one could be found alive. The entire crew of 8 people died. A little later, a second plane appeared and tried to find out why contact with the leader was lost.
Он был летчик, как говорят, ас.
He was a pilot called an ace. There were different conversations about why this happened. They said that the obstacle was an unmanned anti-submarine helicopter launched from Essex. The Soviet plane was forced to avoid a collision with it, and because of this a disaster occurred.
Произвел сверхэнергичный маневр, который привел к катастрофе.
The absence of the plane crash episode itself in the film footage gave rise to other versions. Among them is the assumption that the plane was shot down by the aircraft carrier's air defense weapon. However, they are all unproven. The wreckage of the plane is at an inaccessible depth, and it is technically impossible to restore the missing newsreels. The American sailors were the only ones who saw what happened with their own eyes, so we have to accept their version. It is most likely true. From a report from the commander of the Essex. At 16:10, a Russian destroyer with side number 311 approached and stood along the side to transfer wreckage and bodies. At 16:27, the Essex lifeboat commenced the transfer. The destroyer with side number 311 was the Tu-16, so it finally met with the aircraft carrier. The bodies were packed in special bags. They were transferred by crane to the boat. At the end, documents were handed over with a detailed description of what happened.
Наши матросы принимали носилки с этими вот мешками.
Our sailors received these bags on the destroyer. The bags were closed with zippers. We opened them from the side of the head to make sure that there was really a body inside and not something else.
Люди, чтобы ничего другого там не было.
The Americans take the opportunity to photograph close-ups of the Soviet destroyer. The Cold War is still ongoing. After the transfer of bodies was completed, four planes took off from the deck of the aircraft carrier. They flew in formation over the Soviet ship, paying tribute to the memory of the fallen pilots. As the destroyer Sosnatelny departed, it fired a 3-time farewell salvo from its main caliber guns.